Welcome everyone. I am Lucy. I'm a second year English language and linguistics student. If you're looking for the Leeds Uni CU Big Question event, you found us and it's a pleasure to have you join us this evening. Welcome everyone. I am this Lucy. We are addressing a series of big questions in the form of 3 evening events taking place over the next few months, where we'll chat about life, meaning and faith. This evening, we're thinking about connection. How can we feel connected, and what does our longing for connection tell us about what it means to be human? As the University of Leeds Christian Union, we exist to have the kinds of conversations that matter. University is a place where we can think these things through. It is a time where we are working out who we are and what we believe. We want to create dialogue and share the hope of Jesus. Whoever you are, or whatever you believe, you're welcome. We would love to link up with you if you are new. So there's a contact form in the description of the YouTube live stream that you're probably watching right now. And it will also be on our social media platforms, both Facebook and Instagram. This is rather a strange time to be alive. We're having to connect, pardon the pun, over the internet now more than ever. Whether you're coming to a new city or returning to a city that is very different to how you left it, it's strange for us all. If you'd like to get connected with someone from the CU, have a chat or go for a coffee, please do fill out our contact form. So I'll just give you a little rundown of how this evening is going to go. Firstly, we will hear from Pete, who is our speaker this evening. And then we're going to hear from Hetty, who will be answering a few questions on what connection looks like for her as a student in Leeds. Then there'll be a chance for you guys to ask your questions via Slido. If you just type in Slido in the search bar of your search engine, it should come up with the website, and you type in the code 12355, and then ask your questions, and we will have time later to answer them. If you don't have any questions, you can upvote the ones you want to hear answered by Pete. If you're just joining us now, welcome. You are in the right place, I hope. I'd now like to welcome Pete, our speaker for this evening, with the magic of technology, I hope. Hi, Pete. Can you hear me?
I can. Good to see you, Lucy. Good to see everybody.
Hello. Right, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit of your story.
Sure. So I'm Pete. I'm married to Linda, got 2 little boys who've just gone to bed. Samuel, who's age 9, Toby, who's 5. I work for the family of Christian unions. So you'll be aware now that there's a Christian union at the University of Leeds. There are Christian unions at 130 other British universities. And my job really is to help Christian students to understand what it means to follow Jesus in their different university contexts. So really different from uni to uni, and obviously, as you've already been saying, really different for all of us at present. And I live in Leeds. I live in Kirkstall, in fact, so not very far from many of you this evening.
So we are talking about connection this evening, as everyone might already know. So what's the strangest interaction you've had with someone?
Oh, strangest interaction. Well, I quite like collecting. Until lockdown happened, I used to travel quite a lot on trains. And so what I quite like doing is collecting stories of famous people that I've met on trains. So I've sat next to John Prescott, the old Deputy Prime Minister, Nigel Farage, a couple of Blue Peter presenters. Who else? A judge from X Factor, so this has been really exciting. Often quite stilted conversations, and often actually the idea of meeting these people is more fun than actually meeting them, but nonetheless a strange connection of sorts.
Yeah, I know who to go for now for my ticket for the Oscars then. Got quite
absolutely.
Yeah, so do carry on sending in your questions for the Slido as we hand over to Pete now for our talk on connection. So over to Pete.
Amazing. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to have this opportunity this evening, whether you're watching live or on catch up. Do be popping through those questions on Slido 12355 on slido.com. Normally in these events, it's that sort of interaction that makes them come alive. So really look forward to hearing your comments or questions. As Lucia said this evening, we're thinking about connection. And I'd like to just start with a thought experiment. If you think about the word connect or connected or connection, what are the words or pictures that you immediately associate with that group of words? I mean, for some of us, maybe we would think instinctively about links in a chain that are connected together. Some of us might think about cogs in a machine that are meshing together. Some of us might think about wireless technology, about being connected to Wi-Fi or connecting to Bluetooth with some speakers. You might think about transport connections. You might, like me, have missed your connection, and I was stranded in an airport for a few hours. Maybe you think about romance, looking for spark, that special connection with the special someone. When we talk about being connected, we're aware that we can't think of ourselves as free-flowing nodes, as individual actors. The fact that we even think that connection is important about talking about this evening shows that we instinctively know that we thrive best when we're rightly linked to our environment. And particularly tonight, we're going to be thinking about our social environment. We have a sense that actually as humans, we thrive most when we're in right relationship with those around us. And what I'm going to suggest tonight, this is where we're going to end up, is that this isn't just a quirk of deep psychology, though this is knit into our psychology, but it's reflective of the relational reality in which as humans we live and move and have our being. That's what we're going to get. It's going to take us just a few minutes to get there. But first of all, let's start with this desire for connection that we have. Lots of research confirms the instinct that humans have for connection. I've been reading a couple of psychologists called Gregory Walton and Shannon Brady. They particularly look at the experience of undergraduates going to university and looking for connection, which I realise speaks directly into the situation of some who'll be watching this evening. And these two psychologists suggest that all of us, in seeking to connect with people around us, ask a series of questions. In fact, 4 questions, which I'm briefly going to outline. Here's the first one. The first question is, does anyone here even notice me? Does anyone here even notice me? I don't know whether you like the figure Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. I just think he's a brilliant character. And there's at one point where he says, don't pay any attention to me. No one ever does. And the reason why we find that kind of amusing is because we know that at the most basic level, all of us want to be seen. All of us want to be recognized by other people. And that's what makes small acts of recognition extremely powerful. In one of the stories, when Eeyore is noticed, he just pipes, oh, thanks for noticing me. It means that recognition is a powerful thing. Simply learning the names of people around us. Maybe being willing to re-ask people's names if we've forgotten them. Nobody ever gets offended if you ask their name again, really. Asking the person from a different culture in your flat whose name just sounds unpronounceable and feels forgotten, to write it down so that you can learn it phonetically. That counts for a huge amount in helping somebody else to connect. I had a study which talked about people being released from hospital when they'd been admitted for serious mental health struggle. A few of them were randomized and received periodic postcards from a staff member that they'd met in hospital. And the little notes were very simple. They simply acknowledged the person. The sort of note was like this: Dear Joe, it's been some time since you were here at the hospital, and I hope things are going well for you. If you wish to drop me a note, I'd be really glad to hear from you. Do you know, those receiving postcards had significantly lower relapse rates than those who didn't. 1 in 4 participants spontaneously expressed thanks for the postcards they'd received. Here's one example. You will never know what your little notes mean to me. I always think someone cares about what happens to me, even though my family have kicked me out. I'm really grateful to you. Now, listen, we can't force people to notice us or to remember us. In fact, as we'll think in a few minutes' time, it gets ugly if we try to force people to remember us. But doesn't this already drop some hints of ways in which we can start connecting with others and help those who are feeling disconnected? One of the best conversations you can ever start is, I'm Pete, what's your name? I'm Lucy, I'm glad to meet you. What little things could you do to show that you've noticed those who are around you, who might feel incognito? So there's the first question. Does anyone here even notice me? Here's the second one. Are there people whom I connect with at all? Are there people whom I connect with at all? When we find that we have things in common with people, whether it's little details or even experiences in our lives, we feel more connected. Get this, we all hate group projects, don't we? I've never met anybody who likes a group project. But undergraduates have been found to express greater interest in group projects and to work harder on them when they find that they share a birthday with somebody else within their group. Isn't that amazing? A little random detail can provide an affinity, a connection that causes people to want to work hard for each other. I don't know if you found that. I support AFC Bournemouth. There aren't very many AFC Bournemouth supporters in Leeds. When I meet someone who supports Bournemouth, the connection is there. When I meet someone who is into a same piece of music as one that I find beautiful, or who's watching the same series on TV at the moment, the connection is there. Even more, where we find that we have a common experience, something which has been really precious to you for good or for bad, and you meet somebody else who says, do you know what? I know what you're talking about. I've been there. The connection is there. In his book, The Four Loves, C.S. Lewis writes this about friendship. He says, friendship arises where two or more companions discover that they have in common some insight or interest or even taste which others don't share, and which till that moment each believed to be their own treasure, unique treasure or burden. The typical expression of opening friendship is often something like, what? You too? I thought I was the only one. When we recognize that we have details and experiences in common, it fosters connection. One of the things then that I think we can do online is to try and avoid too many cheesy icebreakers. I know lots of us like cheesy icebreakers, but the others are just horrified by them. They set some on edge, particularly those who aren't from British culture. But there are other things that we can do to genuinely get to know each other. One thing that I know that some members of the CU here have done at different times is to split into groups and to try and find things that they have in common, either the highest number of things they have in common or just the weirdest or quirkiest thing that they had in common. Someone told me recently that they did it and they found that all of their dad's names began with G. It seems strange, doesn't it, that this could be the basis for connection, but it seems to be the way that we work. Over the summer, I was responsible for helping to design a tea towel that freshers could take, which would help new flatmates make connections. And the questions on the tea towel are from the fun and superficial. You know, what's your most used emoji? And are you a good dancer? And what's your favorite sandwich and why? Through to questions which allow people to go a bit deeper if they want to. What's your absolute dream job? What do you want to be remembered for? And even the deepest questions of all, spiritual questions. If you could ask God one question and you knew he would answer you, what would it be? Perhaps you could be the one who poses some of these questions to those around you. As you discover things in common, it might help you and it might help those around you to feel better connected. Here's the third question that we ask as we go into a new place. Is this a setting in which I belong? Is this a setting in which I belong? Again, the research shows that to feel properly connected, students need to not only have a friendship group of other students, but to feel a deeper sense of connection, they need to feel some sort of connection to the university and even to the city as well. To be most deeply connected whilst we're at university, we need not only student friends, but also to be hooked into the wider social and even built environment. Students who have very tight relationships with other students then often still feel as though they're not very deeply connected at university. To experience deepest connection, we must meet those in our city who aren't students. Now, this is quite difficult at present, though it's not totally impossible. But even for those for whom meeting those who aren't students in Leeds is difficult, I think you should aspire that by the time that you graduate, you've met a few other people here in Leeds who don't study at the university. What you can do at the moment is focus on discovering more of the built environment. Do you know, even within walking distance of Leeds campus, there are great places to explore, even with the current regulations. Head into the city centre, go to Lane's Espresso, that's my favourite coffee outlet. Go to Trinity Kitchen, I just think that's a brilliant place to keep exploring. I also love the market stalls at Kirkgate Market, especially the street food. Just incredible smells from all over the world if you go at the right time of day. Or if you want to get some into nature, Kirkstall Valley Nature Reserve is this hidden gem. It's just behind Aldi off Kirkstall Road. You might like to ask returning students, how have you built non-student relationships here in Leeds? And what are the hidden gems that would be great for me to discover? I want to feel connected here. And then the psychologists say the fourth question that we ask, and maybe this is the deepest of all, is, do people really value me? Do people really value me? At the basic level, the psychologists found that we feel connected when our basic whether that's my gender or my nationality or my ethnicity or something else, particularly if we're from a minority group, as soon as we're aware that people with our identity are welcome, it helps massively. But more deeply, we feel connected not only when people see these kind of outer identity labels, but they see something of the real us, and yet they still value us. Now, these deepest levels of connection require vulnerability on our part. I often think of it as being a bit like your Spotify playlist. There are some that you're happy to be public, and there are others that you really do not want to be public. But actually, we need to let people in to see the parts of us that are often hidden if we're to be truly loved and valued as we really are. See, we can keep things hidden inside of us, always hiding the real us, but it means that we always feel somewhat disconnected. Do people approve of me or a shadow of me? To have the deepest level of connection is when we share something of ourselves and we feel valued. But it feels very vulnerable, because if we share something of ourselves and we're not valued, we feel more disconnected than ever. Again, the psychologists say if you can have a small number of friends and you can gradually share some of those precious things to you as you feel able, at a speed that suits you, you will know deep connection. And so the encouragement there is to be brave, to make yourself vulnerable. And clearly, again, we can help other people, can't we? To respect them, to be affirming of them, even in their difference, especially if they're from a minority group and they're sharing something which is clearly important to them. Now, I've got to say, probably a lot of this seems like common sense to you. Probably nothing that I've said this evening particularly strikes you as, oh yeah, I've not even thought about that when it comes to making connection. But I think we've come to value some of this wisdom, this way of the world afresh, haven't we, over the past 6 months during COVID-19. And that's because the COVID pandemic has challenged some of the big cultural stories that we previously assumed and held to, which maybe inoculated us to our need for connection. Here are two stories that I think many people are just wondering whether or not they can hold on to anymore. One is the big story of naturalism, that the universe came from nothing, an impersonal nothing, and it's going to an impersonal nothing. And all that really exists is what we can see and touch and measure, impersonal matter. That renders you and I just a Russian roulette of time plus chance plus genetics. It means that our personality isn't actually really real. And that story, I think, doesn't really feel like it fully dignifies what we've said about what makes each of us us. It seems to fall short when it comes to describing what human relationships are really like. So I think many people I meet are wondering whether or not this story really does it. The other story that I think we're questioning is when it comes to freedom. Do you know, we've been schooled within our culture to think that our freedom is maximized when we can do whatever we choose. But hasn't the past 6 months challenged that? Yes, I know we're frustrated about the activities that we can't do. But don't you find that more than that, you're frustrated that you can't do them with other people that you would like to do those activities with? Do you know, those big stories cast our reality as basically non-relational. But don't we know, really close to a heart at the moment, we live in a relational environment. Now, let me say, that reality doesn't catch the writers of the Bible by surprise. Almost each one of them, almost every book of the Bible says, listen, of course relationships matter most to us, because we live in a relational environment. That's not a psychological mirage, that's our reality. But even further than that, they say, you will only truly understand relationships. In fact, you will only truly understand what it means to be you when you put your finger on the relational pulse at the heart of the universe. You might not be familiar to reading the Bible. The Bible actually is a library of several forms of literature. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read just a part of it. It's a part that you might be quite unfamiliar with. It's a psalm, it's poetry. What I'm about to read to you is an ancient poem, more than 3,000 years old, which reflects on what it means to live in a relational reality. You might just like to listen in. This is what the poet says. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle even on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will become night around me, even the dark won't be darkness to you. The night will shine like day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. Now, that's a part of the Bible. It's from the Old Testament. It was written 1,000 years before the coming of Jesus. But as the story of the Bible continues, we find that there is this God who knows everything, who knows all of the details of our lives, who knows our suffering, who knows our passions, who knows our brokenness, warts and all, but who loves us and who pursues us. And ultimately, in the person of Jesus, not only made himself known in human space and time, but through his death in our place makes himself knowable. I don't know if you've ever had that experience when you found out something in somebody else and it just shows you how much they have hurt you. Sometimes relationships are damaged when we find out what others have done. But it turns out that this God takes the cost of our bad relationship upon himself, onto his own shoulders, ultimately at the cross. But then it means that we can approach him and connect with him, eternally reconciled, eternally known, eternally loved, eternally connected. And let me say, this not only makes a difference in connecting with the relational heart of the universe, but it spills out in our own relationships too. Listen, when I know the deep and real connection that psalmist talks about, it frees me. I am free to look out for other people. I don't need to prove myself anymore. I don't need to earn connection with God or anyone else. I don't need to control or manipulate situations so that people know my name. Knowing connection with God sustains me when I'm feeling lonely. It means that whilst I might be knocked down, I'm not knocked out. But it also frees me to make the healthiest connections with others. I can be honest with myself and tell the worst, even to other people. I don't have to be frightened that they might find things out about me, because I know that I'm loved and I'm forgiven. And it also means that I can be unshockable around others, because I know that there is a God who knows the worst about them too, and will take their failure upon his shoulders so that they can be brought back to him. Listen, this isn't an easy time to be making connections with each other. In many ways, I think we need all of the help that we can get. And I suspect that the next few weeks are going to feel quite up and down when it comes to just feeling connected, particularly if you're new in Leeds. This evening, let me say, listen to that deep desire. Listen to that deep intuition for connection. Could it be that reality really is relational? And as you come to know the living God that Jesus reveals, then you might not only get connected to God, but also invited to connect with others around you in a depth of intimacy that you've never known before. Looking forward to your questions and comments. Do be putting them in on Slido 12355. But for the time being, back to Lucy. You're mute, Lucy.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So thank you very much for that, Pete. As we said, do keep on sending in your questions. If you don't have any, just upvote the ones that are there so we can hear Pete's answer. And what an encouragement it is to know that in this time of physical disconnection, we can be eternally connected with God. In these big question events, we want to hear from students about how they've personally grappled with these topics and how Jesus has affected their life. We want to hear from Hetty tonight and how this topic has been personally lived out in her life. So we'll try get Hetty on now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Amazing. How are you doing, Hetty?
Doing good, thanks.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're studying?
So I'm Hetty, I'm a second year, and I'm studying theatre and performance.
Ooh, very, very interesting. Right, we'll get straight stuck into the questions. During your time at uni, what has best helped you to connect with people?
So something that really helped me to connect is taking the time to ask people questions and then really listening to the answers that they're giving you and responding to them with truthfully what you think, because when you tend to ask people, well, what I've found is that when you tend to ask people notice that you're listening, and they notice that you're thinking of them. And they'll often ask you back, which is just quite a good sort of breeding ground for like creating a relationship between you. And it is kind of daunting. Like, I get daunted when I have to do it. I think everybody probably does. But you might have to be the first person who asks, because that way, like, people know that you care, and they care about you as well, and it just sort of feeds that relationship. And it's kind of like Pete was saying, like, we all want to be noticed and everybody wants to be valued, and feel like loved. And this was a way that I made quite a strong connection with one of my housemates, actually. So we live together now, and in first year we always used to get the bus. She was on my course, and we'd always get the bus home together, and we'd ask each other about like how our home life was and what we're missing from home, because we met in the first few weeks. And we live together now, so it's created quite a good connection between us.
Yeah, amazing. How has having a connection with God made a difference in your life?
So I think for me, probably one of the biggest parts of my relationship with God is trust, and especially at the minute, considering how we all have to live really differently. But it's been a big part for quite a while for me, and I often find that having trust in God's plan for me, his love, and knowing that he's going to watch out for me as his child can make quite a visible difference in daily life, like when I keep that in mind. So the other day I was speaking to a different housemate about things that are quite little at the minute, but well, in the big picture they're quite little, but they seem quite big at the minute. So like choosing university modules and like placement years, like what we're going to do afterwards and stuff like that. And she noted that I seemed to be kind of like quite relaxed and less stressed than she was, and it opened up just a really nice conversation about like why I'm trusting, because I trust in like God's plan, even though I'm not sure what it is, where it's going, but I know that where I am, he's led me there to be there. And that obviously visibly came out of me in that situation, which she could see, and it started a really great conversation as well. So
yeah, just being a witness is simple enough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Are there ways that being connected to God has freed you to help other people?
Yeah, so having a like personal relationship with God is just like really amazing and really freeing. And often for me, I think to help other people, it's like looking at the example that God shows to me. So like he sent his son to save us, like not just me, like everybody, and he shows us the extent of his love that way. And I think that's something that I just want to share and like show back to the people around me. Whether that's serving, like doing little things for church or other ways, or just showing love and kindness to somebody who needs it. I think that's how I would probably do it. So I'm thinking, a while ago, I had a friend who's not a Christian, and he went through like a really, really messy breakup that affected him sort of quite a lot, affected his mental health. And it made me think, like, God is always showing us love consistently and guiding us even in our like lowest lows. So I was trying to be there for him consistently as I could, for him to just have a little vent or a cry, or just be comforted. And not only this, but because I'm a Christian, like when he shared his burden with me, I was able to then share that with God. And actually God like used that situation for him to really like bring him up and build him up and bring him to a better place. And like everyone has bad days and bad periods. And I'm definitely not perfect and like don't do all of these things all the time, but it's something that I find comes from my relationship with God, like trying to show love to the people around me, especially the people you really, really care about. You want to do that anyway, but and yeah, just understanding the sacrifice that God made for me makes me want to show the same love to other people.
Yeah, that's amazing, Hetty. Thank you so much for that. We go, yeah, thank you. We are going to head over to Slido now for a little Q&A with Pete. If you haven't got your question yet, try get it in now, or just upvote a few. Pete, are you ready to be grilled?
Let's go for it.
Right. So our first question, which has had 9 upvotes, wow. Should we keep trying to connect with people who don't seem to want to connect with us?
Clearly we don't want to bully people into connecting with us. However, and I suppose I do want to add that different people will want to connect in different ways. It may be that you have people in your flat who are from different cultures or countries, or who are just from different personality backgrounds or types. And therefore, sometimes when people can seem a little aloof or distant from wanting to connect with us, it says more about preferences and maybe the way that we're inviting them to connect with us than actually the deeper desire for connection. And so I suppose if you're in a flat and you just think, we are struggling to connect, I can think of a situation like this myself, actually. There was somebody on my first year corridor at uni, and they just seemed to opt out of pretty much everything that we wanted to do. And you know what, sometimes I think just an honest conversation is quite helpful there. Do you know what, we would really like to get to know you. We would really like, we think that we can be good for each other within this flat. Are there things that we can do which will just help us to grow in friendship? Are there, and I think you could gently ask that question. What will help you to want to grow in friendship with each of us? I guess if people genuinely have made friendships elsewhere, then that's fine. But I guess probably that most of us are likely to give up on connecting with people like that more quickly than we are to just annoy people through, being a fly that's buzzing around them that they just want to swat away. You mute. Sorry, Lucy, you're mute.
Can't figure out this technology, can I? Right, on to our next. What if someone who doesn't want to be connected and they're perfectly content in their own company, what can Jesus do for them?
Yeah, so what if I'm someone who doesn't want to be connected, I'm perfectly content in my own company, what can Jesus do for me? All right. Well, I guess we can think of that at 2 levels. There are some people who just like their own company quite a lot. I don't believe that's all classic introverts, but there are some people who do just enjoy their own company a whole lot. Part of what I think I would say, and certainly this is what the Bible would say, is that you may be quite content there. But actually, to be human and to fully appreciate all of who you are, sometimes you need other people to draw out from within you character strengths that you didn't even know that you had. And to some extent, I guess all of us will be aware of that. There are times when, do you know what, we were happy enough by ourselves, but somebody came across our path, and actually through relationship with them, we discovered a depth and a beauty maybe in them and also in ourselves that we'd not seen before. Now, the deeper question is, look, well, I'm happy as I am. Maybe I don't need to connect with God. I guess I'd take this at 2 levels again. Look, one, if reality really is relational, then you'll only ultimately make sense of who you are and your other relationships if you live in the light of that relational reality. And so ultimately you'll find that you are impoverished through not living with the ultimate relationship for which you were made. Beyond that, though, what I'm not saying this evening is, if you've got a need for connection, God will sort that out. What I am saying is that the living God is there. He loves you. He pursues you. He wants to connect with you. And not just so that it can meet your deep need for connection, but so that you can understand what it means to be human in every sense. And so what we're saying tonight isn't, oh, you should think about Jesus if you feel a deep need for connection. What I'm saying is, what sort of reality do you live in? Do you really want to say, we talked about the story of naturalism, this story that the universe came from nothing and will go to nothing. And impersonal reality. Do you really think that an impersonal reality can account for the depth of personality that we see in our other people and in ourselves? Actually, it points to the fact that the universe is relational, that it's personal. The question then is, who is the person? And Christians believe that in human space and time, that personality pulled back the curtain and has made himself known. But even more than that, he's shown the depth of what he's like, that he would take the cost of our relationship upon himself that we might know him forever. And that is transformative, not just upon your relationships, but upon everything else. Doesn't mean if you enjoy your own company, you're suddenly going to become extroverted. What it does mean is that your introversion will be molded into something all the more beautiful and all the more useful. And that is an exciting journey to be on.
Yeah, wow. How do you know that connection with God isn't just a psychological thing?
Yeah, so I even thought that as I was reading that incredible old poem. Some people might be thinking that, well, this is a beautiful poem and it speaks of something weighty. But how do we know that's not just in his head? And my Christian friends who've invited me along this evening, how do I know it's not just in their heads as well? I think you can think about this question at many levels. But the key thing I want you to know is that we believe that this God is there to connect, not as a comfort blanket, but because there are real reasons to trust in him. Now, the fact that we desire for connection is interesting in and of itself, isn't it? If ultimately reality is impersonal, the fact that we would feel such deep desire for personal connection would seem weird. And actually, it would mean that maybe our desires just deceive us as a result of our evolutionary psychology, an unfortunate accident. Christians say, no, you do not have to deny those deep desires. They are there and they are true. And they're like a homing desire, a homing device, which calls us to God. But many people would say, well, yeah, that's good, but it's not enough. I would say a couple of things. One is that the Christian worldview, the Christian story, makes much more sense of what it actually feels like to be you than any other story that's out there. And I just challenge you at that point to think, okay, try it on for size. Okay, when you go to the optician and, well, at least Lucy and I know what this is like. When the optician does better or worse, better or worse, better or worse, try the Christian story on. Does it actually seem to bring things into sharp reality, or does it make them more blurry? And do you know what I've found that it's a little like things just snap into place, into color all of a sudden. But here's the biggest thing of all, and it comes down to the person of Jesus. Jesus makes such extraordinary claims about himself. He goes around acting and speaking and treating people as if he were God. And you know what? If you meet Jesus up close and personal, you will realize that you can't put him in a neat box. And for me, the biggest reason why I believe that God is there and wants to connect with me is that I can find no other satisfactory explanation for who Jesus is than the fact that he really is God in the flesh. And again, we could say more about this, but if actually you're asking this question about, is this just psychology? Then ultimately the question is, what are you going to do with the person of Jesus?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we got time for just one more, maybe. I often seek connection by seeking approval from others, but it gives me no satisfaction. Where should I look to feel connected?
Well, listen, again, the desire for approval isn't necessarily a bad one. Okay, the fact that we want people to look at us and say, well done, is not a bad thing. And actually, approval can be a beautiful thing when somebody causes us to just take a step back and look at what we have brought to the table. So we mustn't despise the desire for approval. The Bible would actually say that our desire for approval is God-given. But here's the thing with all of our desires. We can take a good desire and we can look to fulfill it in all of the wrong places. And I guess that's what this person is saying here. I'm taking this good desire for approval, and actually maybe I'm turned up the volume on that desire and turned down the volume on other things that would provide checks and balances. But I'm something of an approval hoover. I'm going from person to person, and I'm almost even manipulating them into saying things about me which sound nice. And yet, as this person has said, it doesn't satisfy. And part of the reason it doesn't satisfy is we kind of know that we've been manipulating them. We've just been showing our best side. We've only been showing the good things that we bring to the table and not the bad things. And so late at night, we lie awake in night and we're playing conversations and we're thinking, if they really knew what I was like, would they still approve of me? Now, in the Christian story, approval, again, is one of our desires that points to God. That Jesus, who is the approved one, comes and dies for us, the one who actually naturally deserved God's disapproval for how we've lived and treated each other in the world. And yet, because he dies in our place, and because we're united to him, all of the things which deserve our disapproval are dealt with, such that God can say to us in the person of his Son, you are my child whom I love. With you I am well pleased. Now, what that means is, in Jesus, in a million years' time, I will still have the approval of the only person whose approval ultimately matters to me. And in a million years' time, I will not look back and say, oh, do you know what? God, your approval is pretty good, but I really wish I also had the approval of my flatmates in 2020. You will not care. You will not care what they think about them. Now, when I know that God truly knows everything about me and he approves of me, then that frees me not to be going around manipulating people, like massaging their back so that they'll massage my back. But actually, I'm free to do the right thing. I'm free to serve them in love. And so the thing that ultimately frees us from going around being approval hoovers is to know that the one who knows everything about me approves of me. And when I settle my heart in his approval, that I'm set free to be honest with myself and honest with other people.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Do you think we have time for one more? Yeah, let's go for it. How do I be bold and step out and connect with others when I'm struggling and want to shut myself away from the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's how many of us will be feeling at the moment, I think, to be honest. We want connection, but partly because we've lost habits of connection during lockdown, and partly because for many of us, mental health struggles have been somewhat exaggerated and exacerbated over the past few months. It just feels like an extra weight to have to go and connect with others. I mean, I think what I would start with is even just being able to connect with one or two people who you know are committed to you, who you know love you, and who will allow you to struggle, and who won't place an unfair weight on you, is a wonderful thing. You don't have to force yourself to go and be the life and soul of the party. What it might well be is that you just say, do you know what, here is how I'm finding things at the moment. How are you finding things? And that might be all that you can say at this point. Again, ultimately, whilst Christians too deal with the same mental health pressures and struggles of everyone else, many of my Christian friends who've really struggled with quite severe and acute mental health struggles, In fact, they will often go to the Psalms and those poems that I was reading earlier. Sometimes when we're really struggling, actually, a tight logical argument is quite hard to digest, but a picture is much easier. And there are two pictures that keep re-emerging for those who are having mental health struggles in the Psalms. And they are that it feels like you're in the darkness and it feels like you're drowning. And nearly everybody I've talked to who's had mental health struggles just say, do you know what? Even the fact that those pictures are in the Bible and that meshes with my lived experience, that's beautiful to me. It speaks of a God who can understand. And sometimes just knowing, even if it feels like you're clinging on by your fingernails, that there is a God who knows what it's like to be going through what you're going at the moment, who's so committed to you that he's put those pictures to describe that affliction in his word, is enough to just say, do you know what? This is enough for the day ahead. And ultimately, one of the things that will help me in my mental health struggle is to connect with other people, even if and even when I don't feel like it. And so whilst, knowing God doesn't take away that mental health struggle, many people find that the spiritual ballast that comes there really is enough to help them to look elsewhere, to go and see a doctor, to just take their medication for another day, to get some exercise, to talk to other people. And so to that person who sent in that honest question, I just say, if there's one or two people that you just think, I could just speak honestly about how I'm finding at the moment, I think that would be of great benefit to you, and it would dignify your relationship with them as well.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. That's such an important message. We want to say a massive thank you to Pete and Hetty this evening for answering our questions and giving us such a wonderful talk on connection. As we've heard this evening, connection is vital at the moment, and it's harder than ever. But we have a true and loving God who connects with us always. If you'd like to get connected, drop us an email or comment on our social media platforms, and we'd love to meet you one-to-one or connect with you at church. It might be that you'd like community. We have wider community groups that run weekly, and we'd love for you to get involved. There are hall groups for freshers on Wednesday evenings, and CU families, which have just started up, very, very exciting, and are going to be incorporated into our weekly meeting as an entire CU, which is called Equip, to encourage discussion, and also a place where you can meet outside of Equip during the week, where you can build friendships with each other and do evangelism together. All the links to get involved in the CU community can be found on our Facebook page and our Instagram. Just search for Leeds University Christian Union. And do fill out that contact form that is in the live stream link. We'd love to hear from you. Next week on the 26th of October, that's not next week, is it? Our next event, we will have John Wyatt talking to us on the question of science. Hasn't science disproved Christianity, faith, and our need for God? And next month, on November 16th, we'll be hearing from Rebecca McLaughlin about religion. What is Christianity all about, and are we better off without it? That is it from us at Leeds Uni CU. We can't wait to welcome you and get to know you over the term. Bye for now.